Hey everyone, my name is Carter Brown, and so for my topic, I had the Scarlet Letter. The Scarlet Letter was written by Nathaniel Hawthorne in 1849, but it wasn't until 1850 before it was actually published to the public. And so it begins with a woman named Hester Prynne who had a child with another man who wasn't her husband. And this was a very serious thing because back in those days, you weren't allowed to have a child with anyone who wasn't your husband. It was very frowned upon and it was a heinous crime. And so, because she did this, she was ultimately convicted of adultery. So, she's sitting in jail and she is waiting to be paraded through the town. And they're going to parade her through the town to show everyone who had committed a crime and what she had done. And so what they did is they put a letter A on her chest, which was considered a scarlet, hence the name A Scarlet Letter. And so as she gets paraded, she's humiliated, she's embarrassed, and they just pretty much torture her, and she's considered an outsider after all of this happens. And her husband had supposedly died 2 years before all of this happened, but he ends up showing up at the parade. And despite all of the public shaming and punishment of both Hester and her daughter, Hester never gives up the identity of her daughter's true biological father. And she doesn't do this because she doesn't feel as if Pearl's father should go through all of the stuff that she is going through, and she feels that it was ultimately her decision and her sacrifice. And so as Hester is being walked through the town, her long lost husband returns in disguise. His goal is to take revenge on the mystery man who fathered Hester's daughter. Hester's husband tells the townspeople that he is a doctor named Chillingsworth. And he doesn't ever admit to being her husband because he knows that if he were to Hester's admit to being Hester's husband, then he could ultimately be punished almost the same as she is. And so he wants to find out who the father is. And so it doesn't really take him very long to find out that it was actually the town's reverend, Arthur Dimmesdale, who is the father of Pearl. So Chillingsworth comes up with a plan to basically stalk the reverend day and night. And so because of Chillingsworth's consistent attention, Dimmesdale feels increasingly guilty. And so because of this, Hester eventually reveals who Chillingsworth is to Dimmesdale, and Dimmesdale then ultimately confesses to the town right before he dies. He rips open his shirt and has the letter A on his chest, and then he dies in Hester's arms. And so Chillingsworth then dies shortly after the Reverend does, and he leaves everything with Hester. And so Hester and Pearl can go off and do their own thing and get out of the town, but they end up coming back, and Hester agrees to having the letter A on her chest for the rest of her life. And so she just lives with all of the torture and the embarrassment and humiliation. And so after Hester ends up dying, on her tombstone, it has the letter A, obviously. And so Nathaniel Hawthorne, the writer, He was a very dark, romantic writer and novelist. There was usually something dark or degrading in his writings, and it's very prevalent. It really explains his era and what he grew up with, also about his family history. Supposedly, one of his, I think, grandfathers or uncles was part of the Salem witchcraft trials. And so this is kind of prevalent in his writings because everything was very published, and so it goes back to a lot of the things that we've read about religion and a lot of things, everything is based off of religion back in these days, and it was pretty much the center point of a town and what everybody believed. And so this is why I think that the Scarlet Letter really represents a lot of the stories that we have read in this class. And so after that, I think that it's just a really good representation of what we've read. That's all. Thank you.